Hi everyone, nice to meet you once again. We have a latest news about the war. Be ready. In the frozen expanses of Northern Europe, a new chapter in geopolitical tension is unfolding, one that echoes the ghosts of past conflicts while signaling a precarious future for Russian President Vladimir Putin. The title, Putin's Nightmare, 530,000 Russians Trapped, encapsulates a dramatic escalation along the Russia-Finland border, where economic isolation, military posturing, and simmering public discontent have converged to create a crisis in the Republic of Karelia. This region, home to approximately 530,000 Russians, has become emblematic of the broader fallout from Putin's aggressive foreign policy, particularly his invasion of Ukraine, which inadvertently accelerated NATO's expansion to Russia's doorstep. What began as a strategic maneuver to prevent NATO encroachment has backfired spectacularly, leaving hundreds of thousands of his own citizens economically stranded and increasingly vocal in their opposition. The story centers on the 1,300-kilometer border between Finland and Russia, a frontier that was once a symbol of pragmatic coexistence during the Cold War era. Finland, long committed to military non-alignment, maintained a delicate balance with its powerful eastern neighbor, fostering trade, cultural exchanges, and even joint environmental initiatives. However, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 shattered this equilibrium. Finland, alarmed by the aggression and sharing a lengthy border with Russia, swiftly applied for NATO membership, joining the alliance in April 2023. Sweden followed suit in March 2024, effectively transforming the Baltic Sea into what some analysts call a NATO lake. This shift was not merely symbolic. For Putin, who has repeatedly justified the Ukraine war as a defensive measure against NATO's eastward expansion, the accession of Finland and Sweden represented a profound strategic setback. Finland's military, though small in active personnel, about 23,000, boasts one of Europe's largest reserve forces, capable of mobilizing up to 280,000 troops in wartime. With NATO membership, this force gains access to collective defense under Article 5, meaning an attack on Finland could draw in the full might of the alliance, including the United States. Putin had warned against such moves, threatening unspecified consequences, but his bluff was called. Instead of deterring NATO, his actions accelerated its growth, bringing alliance forces closer to key Russian cities like St. Petersburg, Putin's hometown, and a symbol of Russian imperial pride. The immediate flashpoint emerged in late 2023, when Finland accused Russia of weaponizing migration as a hybrid warfare tactic. Helsinki claimed Moscow was deliberately funneling migrants from the Middle East and Africa to the Finnish border, overwhelming checkpoints and creating chaos. This mirrored tactics Russia had employed against Poland and Lithuania in 2021. In response, Finland closed all 8 land border crossings with Russia by November 2023, a decision that has remained in effect with only brief partial reopenings. The closures were justified as necessary to protect national security, but they have had profound ripple effects, particularly on the Russian side. Enter the Republic of Karelia, a sparsely populated federal subject of Russia stretching along much of the Finnish border. With a population of around 533,000 as of recent estimates, Karelia has long been economically intertwined with Finland. Prior to the border shutdown, cross-border trade was a lifeline, valued at approximately $400 million in 2021. Finnish tourists flocked to Karelian towns for affordable vacations, while Russian timber, minerals, and other goods flowed westward. Cultural ties ran deep. Many Karelians speak Finnish or have Finnish ancestry, dating back to when parts of the region were under Finnish control before World War II. The border collapse, a term used in recent reports to describe the abrupt end of this cooperative era, has left these 530,000 residents effectively trapped in an economic no man's land. Hotels in border towns like Sortavala and Olenets stand empty,
Restaurants have shuttered, and warehouses are filled with rotting timber that can no longer reach lucrative European markets. Selling to alternative buyers like China is unprofitable due to high transportation costs. Estimates suggest the region is losing up to $1 million in economic activity. Unemployment has spiked, particularly in sectors reliant on cross-border commerce, and a brain drain is underway as young, educated residents flee to other parts of Russia or abroad. But the stranding goes beyond economics. Families with ties on both sides of the border are separated, unable to visit relatives or attend cultural events. Dual citizens face bureaucratic nightmares, with travel restrictions severing personal connections that once seemed unbreakable. A resident from Olenitz, now living in Finland, lamented in interviews, "Half of my classmates now live in Finland. We grew up crossing this border as if it didn't exist." The Karelian language, a Finnic tongue distinct from Russian, is fading under Russification policies, with schools prioritizing Russian curriculum and limited access to Finnish resources that were once readily available. Public discontent is bubbling over. In recent months, protests have erupted in Karelia, including a convoy of 150 vehicles demanding the border be reopened. Locals are increasingly blaming Putin and the Ukraine war for their plight, rather than Finland. As journalist Valery Pachov told international media, propaganda says Finland is the enemy, but people don't believe it. They know Finland didn't attack them. They know who closed the door. That's why they blame Putin. They blame the war in Ukraine. This sentiment marks a rare crack in Putin's domestic support, especially in peripheral regions where state media's influence is waning among younger demographics. Karelia's governor, Artur Parfenchikov, a Putin loyalist, has attempted to deflect blame onto Finland, accusing Helsinki of betraying good neighborly relations. Yet even he has been forced to organize local volunteer militias for border patrols, a sign of underlying anxiety. These developments underscore a broader erosion of trust in the Kremlin. Putin's regime, already strained by the ongoing war in Ukraine, which has claimed over 300,000 Russian casualties by late 2023 estimates, now faces internal pressure from economic hardship in the north. Militarily, the situation is equally nightmarish for Putin. Finland has ramped up its defenses, announcing plans to mobilize a staggering 1 million troops by 2031, including raising the reserve age limit to 65. President Alexander Stubb and Defense Minister Antti Hakkinen have emphasized the need for total defense preparedness. The arrival of advanced F-35A stealth fighters, 64 in total, with the first deliveries in 2025, allows NATO to conduct surveillance deep into Russian territory, providing eyes and ears over strategic areas. Joint exercises, such as Northern Axe 25 with British forces in November-December 2025, involving 3,000 troops just 70 kilometers from the border, simulate invasion scenarios and demonstrate NATO's commitment. Russia's response has been frantic fortification. From Petrozavodsk to Alakurty, Moscow is reviving Soviet-era bases, constructing barracks for up to 100,000 soldiers, hangars, and ammunition depots. Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's deputy in the Security Council, has publicly called for walls and barriers to enhance border security. In a particularly ominous move, Russia is militarizing Lake Ladoga, relocating missile boats equipped with Kaliber naval cruise missiles, range of 1,500 kilometers, via internal waterways. This setup allows for potential strikes on Scandinavian targets while remaining hidden from NATO surveillance. These actions evoke historical traumas. Karelia's strategic importance lies in its proximity to St. Petersburg, formerly Leningrad, which endured a brutal 872-day siege during World War II, resulting in over 1 million civilian deaths. Finnish forces, allied with Nazi Germany at the time, played a role in encircling the city. Putin, a St. Petersburg native, has long invoked this history to justify paranoia about Western threats. Now, with NATO headquarters in Mikkeli, referred to as Niinisti in some reports, only 140 kilometers from the border, the fear of encirclement is palpable. The Baltic Sea's transformation adds another layer to Putin's predicament. Once a contested waterway, it is now surrounded by NATO states, potentially trapping Russian Baltic fleet in the narrow Gulf of Finland, 45 kilometers wide at points. Any conflict could lead to a swift blockade, neutralizing Russian naval assets and exposing vulnerabilities in Kaliningrad, Russia's isolated exclave further south. Analysts argue this northern front represents Putin's worst-case scenario, a multi-front challenge draining resources already stretched thin by Ukraine. Russia's economy, battered by sanctions, faces further strain from lost trade with Finland and Europe. The shadow fleet of oil tankers has mitigated some impacts, but the isolation of regions like Karelia exacerbates inequality and fuels discontent. Public comments on social media reflect this. Putin brought all